Hey guys, Dr. Shepard here. I want to talk to you today about something that I have kind of had in the back of my mind to talk about for a while, but it's something that is honestly hard for me to talk about. I get a lot of questions about how I went from being the person that I was as a teenager and now being a successful doctor. I did not do well in high school, not at all. If you've seen my other videos, failing art class, not good at all. I just didn't do the assignments. I would skip classes, just not functioning well. All right, so how did I go from that struggling teenager to someone who now has graduated med school, did really well in med school? I was the chief resident at my residency program and now am an attending physician who is taking care of patients. If you would have told me that I would be able to do all of this stuff as a teenager, first I would have laughed. And then I would have been like, get out, you're being mean. That's not cool. So there are a couple things that I think made a big difference for me. I know that I'm biased because I'm a psychiatrist, but the first thing I would tell you is I didn't really know what mental health struggles looked like when I was a teenager. I think it's super important to take a look at some of the other videos I have up, look at some of the videos on TikTok that I've posted, and think about are these some of the symptoms I'm experiencing? Could this actually be a mental health issue? Or if you're able to do so, go and see a professional and talk to them about what you're experiencing, because they can be really helpful. Even if you don't truly have a mental illness, they can kind of help guide you and help you figure it out. All of this to say that I think the absolute foundation of kind of changing your life around from a teenager who is not able to accomplish the things that they want to accomplish, or who is feeling low, feeling not so confident and not doing well in school, to an adult who is doing well in all of these things, it really involves taking a hard look at your mental health, because oftentimes there is an underlying mental health issue that's pushing all of this along. All right, so you are taking your medicines, going to therapy, you're working on that side of things. What are some other things that you can do to go from being someone who fails an art class to being someone who graduates at the top of their class in med school? So the first thing that I think really turned things around for me was actually a tragedy. So when I was 15, my grandfather was diagnosed with dementia, and we were close. He was an awesome person. He was hilarious. Things started out not so bad, but then during the course of my later high school years, I started to see him really go downhill. And he ended up passing away when I was about 19. Watching what he went through and the suffering that he was experiencing, and the pain that my mom was experiencing in losing her dad, the pain that my grandma, his wife, was experiencing, it kind of shook me into a reality check that there are a lot of really horrible things that can happen in the world, and there are a lot of people that need help. And that kind of became my mission. So I started working at a local hospital and started getting more interested in my science courses, and decided that I was going to change this and one day either become a doctor treating these patients or become a researcher who was going to find the cure. So kind of understanding more what my purpose in life was, and that I had a mission and I had a goal to work towards, that really helped me focus my energy and slog through some of the parts of becoming a doctor that are not so easy and not so fun. So I think it's important to find this purpose, but you also have to keep reminding yourself of it. You might do something like writing down why you're doing something like this, and maybe putting it on a note card on your computer or a post-it note on your mirror, something like that, so that you can be reminded of why you're doing this. Another strategy that some people use is they'll cut out pictures from magazines or make a collage in some way of the goals that they have and what that might look like for them, and have that sitting in the area where you do a lot of your work, and where you kind of tend to get distracted most. So like for me, it would be the desk where I did my homework or whatever. So that can be a constant reminder of why you're doing what you're doing, and it can help, like I said, focus your energy. Another tip that I found really helpful was figuring out how to study. And really what this involved was becoming very intentional about learning how to study. So in high school, I felt like I didn't really know what I was doing. And when I started off in college, I really had to research like different ways of learning, different ways of studying, and practice all of them until I found something that worked for me. Try a bunch of different things because you might be surprised at how much better you can get. So some of the poor performance in high school that I thought was related to me just not being smart enough was actually just related to me not knowing how to study. And once I tried other ways of studying and tried committing to different types for a period of time, I was able to learn what worked the best for me. Another big tip I have for you, which you'll probably hear over and over again in my videos if I haven't done this already, is the importance of building good habits. Even more so, the importance of starting small with building your good habits. So I used to be the type of person that would be like, all right, I'm gonna get it together. Like today's gonna be the day. We are going to go hard and we are gonna get all my homework done and I'm gonna clean my room and I'm gonna get it together. I'm gonna run 3 miles. Like it's gonna be great. I'm gonna be a machine. And that would last for about 30 seconds. And then I would be back to where I started. And that's super common for people. So some of us can kind of force our way into change like that, kind of the rip the Band-Aid off method. But for the vast majority of people, that's not gonna work and it's just not sustainable. What we need to do instead is change habits in a very small and measured way. So there is a researcher named BJ Fogg who researches what he calls tiny habits. And he's done a lot of research out at Stanford on the benefit of building habits in this way and how this tends to work much better for people. And one example that he gives that has always stuck with me is the habit of flossing your teeth. So say you're someone who is not great about flossing your teeth, and every time you go to the dentist, they're like, how often do you floss? And you're like, last time I flossed was when you did it for me. Then if you want to make that a habit, it's not gonna be as effective to just start flossing your teeth every day because that'll probably only last about a week or so. You want to make much smaller changes that can be done with almost no effort so that you almost trick your mind into learning these new habits without a lot of pushback on your mind's part. So the example BJ Fogg gives is just flossing one tooth at night, like one tooth. Like you just floss one, like literally one tooth, and then you throw your floss away. And he says when you first start off, you're going to feel like you want to do more than that, but just stick with it. Just floss the one tooth until that becomes a habit. And then you can add more teeth. And before you know it, you're flossing all of your teeth, and you actually keep flossing all of your teeth because now it's not a lot of mental energy to get yourself to do it. So building these good habits for me, when I tried to sort of muscle through it and change them all at once, it never really worked. But when I started to change it piece by piece, then it was really helpful. So an example would be increasing the amount of time I studied. When I first started off in college, I didn't study nearly as much as I did, towards the 3rd year of college when I was in organic chemistry too, and I really wanted to do well in the exams. It's something I worked up to slowly over time. And so by the time I got to medical school, where all you do is study, it really didn't feel that much different to me than what I had been doing before. All right, so here we are, last tip. This tip can be kind of controversial. And I think that is because it can be hard to hear. And it was something that was pretty hard for me to hear the first time I heard it, but I gave myself time to be mad at the messenger. So you guys might be mad at me for a minute, I'm sorry. But then I let myself sort of process it, think it over. And I want you guys to know that I know that we don't know each other in person, but I legit care about all you guys watching this. Like, I want you guys to succeed and to do the best that you can and to be the best that you can and to, above all, just be happy and fulfilled and satisfied and live a good life. And so sometimes I'm going to share tips like these that maybe don't feel so good at first, but then once you get over that initial sting, it's actually really helpful. So this tip is to try as best as you can to take radical levels of responsibility for things. So what does that mean? This means I want you to put yourself in the driver's seat as often as you can. And even if you don't own the car, even if somebody tells you you can't drive, kick them out of the front and get in that driver's seat. That's what this is about. So when you are taking radical levels of responsibility for things, you are looking for ways to change things. You are taking ownership over your life and you are making changes that you need to make. And it's really empowering too. So it might be really difficult sometimes, but it can also be a process that kind of frees you to realize that you are a strong person. So I'll give you an example. When I was a teenager and, even a couple years after, while I was still learning to do this skill, I would get very frustrated with external circumstances when I wasn't meeting my goals with school. For example, when I failed that art class, I wanted to look for somebody else to blame. So I wanted to say that the classes were too hard, or the teacher wasn't good enough, or I wasn't smart enough, or my friends were doing better because they were using the strategy that I couldn't use. I wanted to kind of put the onus on everything but what I could control. So it was a game changer when I said, you know what? Screw it. I am going to pretend like I am responsible for every last detail of everything that happens to me. So if you've been the victim of trauma or abuse or bullying or anything like that, I think it's really important to understand that you are not responsible for what has happened to you. That's not what I'm talking about. But even in cases where something is not your fault, looking for ways that you can still gain some control can actually be incredibly freeing. So I'm definitely not perfect at this now, but now I look for ways to take responsibility in situations that I might not have done that before. To give you an example, I had a patient's family member who was pretty unkind to me recently, and said a lot of really hurtful things. I think a younger me would have said, this person's just a jerk, or they're going through some stuff. Clearly this is their problem, not my problem. I don't even need to give this a second thought. But what I did in this situation was actually kind of go over all of their criticisms, trying not to necessarily take it personally, because that would be really easy to do, but looking for areas where maybe I could take control of the situation or where I could take responsibility to change something. And one thing that I thought of was changing the way that I was communicating with this particular family member to kind of better suit them. And yes, they were still kind of mean to me. And yes, it was still a really uncomfortable experience. But I came away with it with some knowledge that changed the way that I operated and allowed me to be more effective with this person. So when you take responsibility in a case like that, it doesn't mean that it makes the other person right. It doesn't mean that it makes it okay what they're doing. So it may very well be that your teacher sucks or your homework assignment was too ridiculously hard, but you can take that and hold that in your mind and also still look for ways that you can take ownership over the situation and you can take responsibility. All right. I hope you guys don't want to throw rotten eggs at me now, but if you do, I guess just leave an egg in the comments section. So I just want you guys to know that I am rooting for every single one of you. And if there are other things that I can help you with, please let me know in the comments. And if you haven't already, I would love if you would subscribe, and I will see you tomorrow.